Hey everyone, we're going to go a little bit out of order from your textbook, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to some concepts about sampling versus populations. The reason that I'm doing this is the way that your textbook lays out a lot of the examples in chapters 1 through 4. They deal with individuals. Okay, they give examples of one baby being given this special formula or one student receiving this special programming. In reality, that's not how we do research. We don't do one-off, right? If I'm testing out a new formula, I'm not going to give it to one baby. I'm going to get a whole group of babies to try it out on, to compare it. So I want you to go ahead and be familiar with the concept of samples so that as you're reading through your textbook and looking at these examples, you're able to identify, okay, but this is talking about one individual, one person. The reason for that is I understand why your textbook did it this way to get you familiar with the concepts and the terminology in a way that's easy to understand. But when that's the only way that you learn it, then when you get to chapter 5, the tone of it is kind of, okay, this isn't actually how we do things. Let's make this shift. And so if you've only been thinking in the mindset of individuals up to chapter 5, it's going to make the last 70% of the class, but you're going to have to do a much bigger concept shift than if we go ahead and talk about it. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and introduce information that is not in your textbook yet. So first and foremost, again, whenever we're comparing scores, we're almost always using samples of people rather than individual scores. Now, when we talk about z-tests, we can talk about some utility in using an individual score, right? I want to know, how did my score on the history exam compare to the rest of the class? My kid failed his science test. How does that compare to the rest of the class? Is that unusual? Did a lot of kids fail? So there is some utility in discussing individual scores of individual people. But for the most part, what we're going to be wanting to do is compare samples. So, for example, if I come up with a new study system, a new flashcard system, those aren't great ways of studying. That's a topic for another time. If I come up with a new study system, right, I'm not going to pick one student in one class and see if the study system worked. I'm probably going to pick a whole group of students or even a whole class and compare it to another class. So again, as you're reading through the examples in your textbook, just keep in mind that some of these examples that are proposing analyzing one individual, that's not going to be the case most of the time. We're normally going to be talking about samples. And so that brings us to the idea of a sample versus a population. A population is everyone in the group that you are interested in, okay? If I wanted to study, does having a dog truly benefit emotional health? My sample would be every dog owner, speaking of dogs, would be every dog owner all over the world. If I wanted to narrow it in down to, does having a dog in the United States impact emotional health, my sample would be every dog owner in the United States. That's not feasible, right? I can't go out and survey every single person in the US that owns a dog. I can't survey every person in Missouri that owns a dog. I probably can't even survey every person in Springfield that owns a dog. That's where samples come in. I pick a group of people that I am going to survey, and I try to assess, are they a fair representation of this bigger population of interest? I'm going to pause there and we'll pick up with part 2.